My wife cheated while I was working. Overtime to build our dream, and after the betrayal, I had to let go. Did I make the right choice? I'd been with Sarah for 2 years when I got back from my deployment. I wasn't expecting the easy life. I'd dreamed of, no, things rarely go according to plan. But I thought we were solid, like a well-oiled machine that could handle the little bumps along the way. When I returned, she'd changed. She was still the same in some ways, but I could sense it. She was more distant, less affectionate. Still, I chalked it up to the stress of me being gone, of adjusting to life without me. But then things started happening. Small things that started feeling like warning signs. A missed call here, a late night there. It was subtle enough that I brushed it off, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt something wasn't right. It all came to a head one evening when I came home from the gym. I'd just finished a workout and walked into our apartment, eager to see her, ready to take the weight of the world off my shoulders with her smile. But when I opened the door, I was met with a scene that stopped my heart cold. There, on the couch, was Sarah, with him. Her best friend, Ethan. I'd always thought he was harmless, a guy who was just around sometimes, the funny guy who'd lighten up the room. They were sitting too close, laughing too much, sharing a private moment I shouldn't have been a part of. My blood ran cold. I stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder in my own home. I wasn't sure what to say, but I knew I needed to get out of there before I did something I'd regret. "Hey, I didn't know you were back," Ethan said, his voice too casual, as if this was all normal. But I could tell something was off, that his tone was a little too defensive, like he knew he was caught doing something wrong. Sarah looked up, her face flushing. "I didn't know you were coming home early," she muttered, but her voice lacked the warmth I was used to. She wasn't happy to see me. She wasn't even surprised. I stood there for a moment, processing everything. The walls felt like they were closing in, the suffocating realization of what was happening sinking into my chest. Then something inside me snapped. I walked past them, ignoring Ethan's stammered attempts to get my attention, and went straight to the bedroom. I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Anger, betrayal, confusion. But all of it came flooding in at once. I grabbed my duffel bag and began throwing clothes into it, my hands shaking as I tried to keep it together. I didn't know what to say or how to process it, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to stick around to be a doormat in a relationship I thought was built on trust. Ethan stood in the doorway, his tone turning more serious. "You don't need to leave," he said, his voice low. "We were just talking, man." But I wasn't hearing it. I didn't need an explanation. I needed space. I wasn't sure what Sarah had been thinking, but I could tell she wasn't the person I had come back to. "Don't talk to me," I spat, grabbing my keys off the counter and slamming the door behind me. I could hear Ethan's voice faintly, calling after me, but I was already out the door, heading to my car. I drove aimlessly for a while, not knowing where I was going, just needing to get away from them. Eventually, I ended up at my old buddy's place. Tyler had been one of the few people who'd stayed in touch while I was overseas. He wasn't a close friend, but I knew he'd always have my back. I poured a drink and sat down, trying to sort out what had just happened. But before I could even get a word out, my phone rang. It was Sarah. I didn't answer. The whole night passed in a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal. I wasn't sure how to handle it. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, to demand answers. But another part of me knew that the truth was already out there, sitting on that couch with Ethan. They'd crossed a line, and now it was up to me to figure out what the next step would be. But it wasn't over yet. The real storm was just beginning, and I had no idea how much worse things would get. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying the image of Sarah and Ethan sitting together, the way she looked at him, the way he touched her arm. It was too much. I could feel my anger simmering beneath the surface, but I also knew I needed answers. I couldn't just let it go, pretending like nothing had happened. The next morning, I waited until the afternoon to reach out to Sarah. She had been blowing up my phone all night, but I wasn't ready to talk to her. I needed time. When I finally called her, I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I wasn't going to sugarcoat anything. Her voice on the other end was softer than I expected, almost hesitant. "I know you're upset, and I'm so sorry. You had to see that," she began, and I could hear the guilt in her voice. I didn't want to hear apologies. I wanted the truth. "What was that last night, Sarah?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the rush of emotions threatening to break through. Was that really just talking with Ethan?" There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment I thought she wasn't going to answer. "It's not what you think, I swear," she finally said. "Ethan and I—" "Don't try to explain it," I cut her off. I saw enough to know what was going on. "Don't lie to me. What were you doing?" I could hear the panic in her voice now. "It's complicated, okay? I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." I clenched my fist around the phone, trying to keep my cool. "You're telling me you accidentally cheated on me with your best friend? And now you expect me to just forgive you?" She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, it was like she was trying to piece together what she'd just said. No, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand that it wasn't about you. It was about me." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What do you mean, about you?" I asked, my voice rising with frustration. "What does that even mean?" She hesitated. "I've been feeling lost, Jake. You've been gone for months, and I don't know. I wasn't happy. I thought I was, but when you left, everything changed. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. And then Ethan, he was there for me when I needed someone. It wasn't supposed to go this far, but it did. I'm so sorry, Jake, I really am." I felt a surge of anger. How could she say this wasn't about me when she had gone behind my back? How could she act like this wasn't a betrayal? The more she tried to explain, the more it felt like she was justifying it. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You've ruined everything. You've ruined us." She choked out a sob. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, but now I'm not sure what to do. I'm so confused, Jake." I let out a bitter laugh. "Confused? You're confused. You cheated on me, Sarah. You betrayed me, and now you want to talk about being confused?" I could hear her sobbing through the phone, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. This wasn't something I could fix with a few kind words. Not this time. "I'm done," I said, cutting her off before she could say anything more. "I'm done trying to make this work when you've already thrown it all away." Before she could respond, I hung up. I stared at the phone for a few seconds, feeling like the weight of everything was crashing down on me. I didn't know where to go from here. Part of me wanted to confront Ethan, to call him out and demand answers, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. Sarah had already made her choice. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about her and her decisions. I wasn't sure if I'd ever understand why she did it. Maybe I never would. But I knew I couldn't stay with someone who didn't respect me enough to be honest, to keep their promises. I wasn't going to let myself be someone's backup plan. The next few days were a blur. I moved my things out of the apartment, went to stay with Tyler, and tried to process what had happened. It was hard, because I kept wondering if I missed something along the way, if there were signs I didn't see. But the truth was, I wasn't the one who had changed. Sarah had. And now, I had to figure out what to do next. I wasn't going to let this define me, but I couldn't ignore how much it hurt. I had loved Sarah, but sometimes love wasn't enough. She had to make her own choices, and now I had to make mine. The days that followed were like a slow burn. I thought moving on would be easier, but the pain of it all lingered. My friends, like Tyler, tried to be supportive, but nothing could fill the void left by Sarah's betrayal. I knew deep down that I had made the right choice in ending things with her, but it didn't change the fact that I had loved her, that I had invested so much into a future that now seemed so distant. It had been a week since I left, and I hadn't heard from Sarah. No texts, no calls, nothing. Part of me was relieved, but another part of me wondered if she was really processing what had happened. Had she regretted it? Or was she just as indifferent as she seemed when she first admitted to her affair? Then, out of nowhere, Sarah showed up at my door. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I had just gotten out of the shower when I heard a knock, followed by the sound of someone hesitantly calling my name. "Jake, it's me, Sarah." I froze. I wasn't sure what to expect, but the sound of her voice sent a wave of emotions rushing through me. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut, tell her to leave, but another part of me wanted to hear her out. Maybe it was foolish to even consider that she could change, but I couldn't help it. I opened the door. She was standing there looking different than the last time I saw her. Eyes red and puffy, hair disheveled, like she hadn't slept in days. She looked broken, but I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse. "I know you probably don't want to see me," she started, her voice trembling. "But I couldn't leave things the way they are. I need to talk to you." I stepped aside to let her in. Not sure why I was doing it, but I did. We both stood in silence for a few moments, neither of us knowing how to begin. Eventually, she spoke again. "I've spent the last week thinking about everything," she said, her voice quieter now. "I've been so lost, Jake. I messed up so badly and I can't undo it no matter how hard I try. But I want you to know that I regret what happened. I never wanted to hurt you. I was selfish and I didn't know how to fix it, so I just ran from it. And now, I can't stop thinking about how I've ruined everything." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hear her apologies, to believe that she was truly sorry. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt the most, didn't want to hear excuses. I had been hurt enough, and no amount of regret could take that pain away. "Sarah, I don't know what you want from me," I said, my voice steady but with an edge to it. "You've already made your choices. And it wasn't just one mistake, it was a pattern. You went behind my back, you betrayed me, and now you expect me to just forgive you and act like nothing happened?" Her eyes filled with tears again, but I held my ground. This wasn't about me forgiving her. It was about me choosing myself. "For once, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I still care about you, Jake. And I'm sorry, I never meant for any of this to happen." I nodded slowly, trying to make sense of everything she was saying. But no matter how many times she apologized, no matter how much she regretted it, I knew that the trust was gone. Trust wasn't something you could just rebuild with a few words. It had to be earned. And Sarah had broken that trust in ways I wasn't sure could be fixed. "I think you need to figure out who you really are before you can be in a relationship," I said, finally speaking the words that had been on my mind. "I can't be a part of that right now. I need to move forward with my life, Sarah, and I can't keep holding on to something that's already over." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, Jake. I'm truly sorry." We stood there in silence for a moment, neither of us knowing what to say next. I knew this was the end of the road for us. There was no going back to what we once had. I had to accept that. After what felt like an eternity, I finally said, "I think it's time for both of us to move on. It's over." She nodded again, her face a mixture of sadness and regret. Without another word, she turned and walked out the door. As I closed it behind her, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was just done. I didn't know what the future held for me, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this define me. I had a life to rebuild, dreams to chase, and a future to look forward to. And as hard as it was to admit, I knew I'd be okay. Because sometimes, letting go was the only way to move forward. So, what do you think? Do you think Jake made the right choice in moving on from Sarah? Or do you believe there was a chance for reconciliation? Share your thoughts in the comments below.